welcome to the Financial Secrets Revealed podcast for Season 2, where we are lifting the lid on financial abuse. And today I am joined all the way from South Africa by the lovely Louis Van der Merwe. Thank you so much for joining us, Louis.
Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Whereabouts are you based in South Africa?
So I'm right at the end in Cape Town. It's a beautiful city, and it's often been awarded the best city in the world. So I might be a bit biased.
Yeah, look, it's certainly spectacular. I have visited gorgeous Cape Town and spent a bit of time there and went up the mountain and down on the V&A waterfront. I have very fond memories of Cape Town. It's definitely a gorgeous city. And if you're going to stay, the Taj is brilliant. That was a great hotel. Beautiful views. So thank you so much for joining us, Louis. You are a 13-year-long financial advisor. How did you get started in the world of financial advice?
That's a great question, Amanda. And I think it's always interesting to reflect just on how you get into something that you might just be doing on autopilot. Interestingly enough, it was studying towards a management degree at the University of Stellenbosch. One of the lecturers came to us and he said, well, we have this new course called financial planning. And really piqued my interest because it had a combination of working with people, maybe using a little bit of tax and investment planning. And I thought it was all about the numbers. Surprise, surprise, 13 years later, the numbers is a very small part of what we do. But straight from university, I managed to join an auditing firm where I was part of a smaller group of financial planners. And then about 4 years in, myself and my manager at that point, we said, we want to do things a little bit differently. And we jumped ship. We started up our own financial planning practice. And January, that would have been 10 years. And it's been a ton of fun.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. It's always good to be able to have, I suppose, the insights to start with and go, actually, you know what? That's not how I'd like to do it. Or, making it more about the people or whatever it is. It's not a bad way to start, to get the experience and know what you don't want to do. Look, I haven't met too many financial advisors who actually, I suppose, left school or at university and became financial advisors. Many seem to fall into it later in life from another career path. So you're one of the very few, Louis, who's, I suppose, made that choice to do it right from a school age. I don't think I even had heard of a financial advisor when I went to high school. So
that's true. I think, Amanda, it's becoming a little bit more of a profession nowadays. I think people are opting to become financial planners, where historically it was very much a career change. I used to be a teacher, I used to be a car salesman, I used to be a musician, and now I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Is the professionalism being raised in South Africa as well? Do you need a university degree now to become a financial advisor?
So not a university degree just yet. We are in the process of regulating the term financial planner, but not everyone can use that. So that's quite exciting. And we've really lifted the bar in terms of continuous professional development. So there's a set amount of hours that every registered representative, that's what we call them here, have to complete. And hopefully over time that will get to a point where you're required to have a university degree. But unfortunately, certified financial planners is still a minority within financial planners, but we're working on it.
Sounds very, very similar to the Australian market, where we've introduced it now. And at this stage, within the next 4 years, people do need to transition to having a degree. So, yeah, it's lovely that the professionalism's being lifted. And hopefully we won't see too much talent running out the door when all the guys over 55 decide they don't want to go to school. So it's looking a bit sad at the moment. Now, you've also chosen to complete the Financial Abuse Specialist course that I put together with help from my lovely co-creator, Michelle Hoskin. So how did you stumble across this? I mean, I'm Australia, Michelle's UK, you're South Africa. It's definitely a global market now. So how did you first hear about the Financial Abuse Specialist course?
Amanda, I remember looking back, it was in the middle of lockdown, and I just started a course in America called the Financial Transitionist with the Financial Transitionist Institute to become a transitionist planner. And that's really helping people through major life events. And all of a sudden, this work popped up about financial abuse. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what would classify something as financial abuse or not. And then at the same time, Michelle was on a podcast with my friend, Francois de Toy, and they really, had a deep dive into the work of, financial abuse practitioners. And so I really felt that was a piece that was lacking in South Africa. There was very little awareness that I knew about. And, being a lifelong learner, it piqued my curiosity and I wanted to learn a little bit more.
Excellent. So stumbling across the course, you're doing another course at the time. You're obviously a glutton for punishment when it comes to studying. Was there a lot of learning in there for you when it came to the red flags or case studies or how advisors can assist? Was there a lot of information for you that you hadn't sort of previously gone down that rabbit hole at all?
Absolutely. I think what we see in South Africa is that typically that work a social worker would get involved in. And I've been fortunate to attend some of the training sessions that was held for social workers specifically around mental illness. And this made me think, well, there's actually this whole new world that financial planners could be exposed to that we can bring into our practice. Because it's not common for clients to necessarily go to a psychologist or go to a friend or family member and talk about these things. We're in a very unique position. And so the information through the course was really helpful and just, you don't know what you don't know. And so this brought that element of, I need to explore this a little bit more to start using the tools and just, I think, a general level of awareness because there's subtle hints. Clients won't necessarily come out and say, I'm a victim of financial abuse. Most of the time, they don't even realize it. But there's these subtle hints saying, my husband just sold my car to use for, the expansion in a business. Or my partner, just took my bank card and made large withdrawals. And so now we have a term that we can link that to and we can say, well, this is actually a form of abuse. And this is what it means, and these are the things that you can do. Are you okay with that? Just starting off there, knowing that it's not acceptable.
So was there, when you're going through the course and you're learning the red flags and that sort of stuff, was there like an aha moment when you sort of went, maybe that client, or I can actually take this back and there's something practical in here for my practice? Was there one of those moments for you when you did the course?
Absolutely. So I think for me, there was a few clients where I said, well, if I knew this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 12 months ago, maybe I would have treated that a little bit differently. Maybe I would have, queried that withdrawal or that strange transaction a little bit more and spend a bit more time asking questions. So I think from the financial planning side, we're so trained to look out for, terrorist activities, and there's a massive amount of legislation, although the likelihood of that is, almost zero.
And apparently if we take the driver's license, it means we can identify it. So,
Yeah, exactly. We know where you live. This is probably not your...
I'm not sure we'll come after you, but hey.
So, Amanda, I think we have it backwards. I think we should look for the highest probability. We say, actually, what's going on here? And sometimes that might be, is this a terrorist activity? And sometimes it might just be, well, did someone coerce you into making this transaction? Are you 100% comfortable with doing this?
So how have you been able to implement some of the learnings into your practice now?
So I deal a lot with people that have lost their partners or their spouses through death or divorce. And interestingly enough, when we start talking about this topic, and I mention that I've done a bit of studying around it and that there's this whole new world and we can start exploring it, almost always someone has a story around, there was maybe some form of abuse, be it financial, be it domestic, be it them not paying their maintenance claims through divorce. That's a very common one that we see in South Africa. And so it's just changed the narrative, changed the way I approach these things, and it opens a platform where, ironically, typically women, just from the nature of the work that we do, they start feeling comfortable with these discussions like, is it okay for me to talk about this? Because money is still a very taboo topic. And the only way we start changing that is through leaning in on the conversation and, creating that safe space and saying, well, if you'd like to, we can talk about this.
Yeah, that's really important, is it, that safe space? Because I've found in recording this podcast, I'm really struggling to find men who are happy to come forward, who, you know, I've approached people who've given comments on, you know, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard cases. You know, everybody's got their 2 cents worth. And I've approached people who've said, look, I've been a victim, you know, this stuff goes on. My ex did X, Y, Z. And, you know, you approach them and said, would you be willing to share the story? And there's crickets, like you just do not hear back. And I think that raises the issue that there's shame, there's embarrassment, there's fear. Have you found that when dealing with people as well, that, like you said, it seems taboo and they didn't realise they could talk about it?
Definitely. I think specifically dealing with men, you know, it might be a little bit difficult. And I'm speaking as a man, you know, saying, well, you know, this is what happened to me. And I think that would probably go for any form of abuse, you know, not only financial. And then secondly, we have, you know, I'm making an assumption that the amount of people that have suffered from that is probably less than women, you know, just because of traditionally men would control the finances. It would be easier to force that sense of power. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And just that, you know, taking the same approach, saying, well, these are the words that we can put around what happened to you. You know, are you comfortable having these discussions? I think it all goes back to, you know, what is the intention of your discussion? Is it to act as a therapist? I think that might be dangerous, but it's just to create that awareness, you know, and say, well, and how do we start changing this? By start talking about it.
Absolutely. Look, yeah, absolutely. I'm not trained as a therapist. I have no, you know, professional designations or degrees or accreditations in that space, but it certainly, you know, dabbles on that. And, you know, if you're anything like me, your conference table now includes a box of tissues next to your hand sanitizer. So that, you know, they are emotional conversations. And like you said, you know, you're dealing with people probably at their most vulnerable too. I mean, death and divorce are not easy for anyone to go through. So you must run the emotional gamut every day when you're dealing with clients.
Amanda, I've seen that most financial planners really just want to help people. And so part of that is having an emotional conversation. A life coach once told me, tire pressure measured is tire pressure changed. And so the same applies to life. Just someone talking through what happened to them, that changes them. They feel, hey, there's someone that listens, there's someone that cares. Maybe in a world where very few people actually care and actually take the time to listen. You know, I think deep listening is one of the greatest forms of respect and possibly even love that you can have for another human.
That's why they call it the gift of time, isn't it? You know, it's pretty sad even when you go to a restaurant now, you know, you see mum and dad and the kids all on their phones and not talking to each other, and that's a great night out for a family these days. So putting it all away and doing the one-on-one is really important. Now, I believe the stats are that for women, I think it's around 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 will experience some form of abuse in their lifetime, whether that's domestic, emotional, financial. And I think the stats for men is about 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. So it's almost double for women, which is probably why we're much more likely to hear about it. That actually comes down to almost 50-50 when we're talking about elder financial abuse. And that's things like, you know, stealing money off the nightstand. There's an expression called inheritance impatience. I don't know if you've come across that one where, you know, I'm going to get it anyway. I'll just take that now. Do you see much of that in South Africa as well?
Yes, we definitely do. So my gran, I'm fortunate, she's 87 at the moment, and she's still alive, and she lives in a retirement village. But she was a social worker for most of her life. And so she experienced, you know, the dealings with elderly people, specifically placing them into retirement villages or, you know, in the later stages of life, the nursing homes. And it would be commonplace for their items to disappear, you know, jewelry to disappear, money to disappear. Unfortunately, most times the children, you know, were not very active as well. And so I think it starts with possibly a sense of neglect. And then us just accepting it, saying, oh, well, you know, that's normal. They shouldn't have left their jewelry on the dresser in their own room. And you know, it is commonplace, and maybe, and maybe so commonplace that we just accept it. But I think it has started to change. You know, people are a little bit more aware. They use kind of monitoring devices to make sure that there's protection around it. It's definitely a conversation we have with our clients saying, well, at a stage where you might not be comfortable making your own or able to make your own financial decisions, what protection measures can we put in place? And that all depends on the legislation in the country. But sometimes it's as simple as saying, well, just check in with this person before I make a large withdrawal or someone, contacts you on my behalf.
Yeah, I think financial advisors and, legal profession as well can add a lot of value there. We often find, where the elderly person has appointed one person to be their, power of attorney, that person has all the power and basically can, by law, rape and pillage their funds or their assets. And it's very difficult to prosecute. Whereas sometimes if you just go, what about two? Because there's always that cross-check then when two people have to be involved. So it seems like such a little thing, but it can be such a protection and a great value add for clients to go, actually, I hadn't thought of that. Look, I trust them implicitly, but, it still happens. So, yeah, there's just little things we can do, aren't there?
Amanda, we have a very strange scenario in South Africa that once you aren't able to revoke your power of attorney, so let's say you might be suffering from dementia and you can't revoke your power of attorney, that power of attorney ceases. So in our legislation, there actually isn't very many options for someone that can't make their own financial decisions. A court has to appoint what we call a curator. That really is a very expensive route, and that person, usually a legal professional, then takes over their whole financial lives. The dilemma comes in is that the people that look at the power of attorney don't very often confirm that it is still in force. And so a simple thing is just picking up the phone and phoning that client, checking, hey, are you still comfortable with this power of attorney? I think that's a really easy way to prevent, fraudulent transactions or abusive transactions.
Yeah, interesting. I've got one at the moment where the daughter and the de facto are joint and several powers of attorney for a woman who's going into care. And one of my questions was, would he go and get a certificate of capacity? Because he was elderly himself. The daughter had mentioned that he was quite erratic in his behaviour. One minute he'd be very kind and happy and helping her, and the next very abusive and, accusing her of awful things and, going through her mother's estate. And so I suggested, look, can I get a certificate of capacity? And I said, look, from both of you, if you want. And he refused and stormed off. He's left and gone back to his own family who, his partner of 20 years had met once. So it was a really unusual situation to, try and help both of them technically, and yet have one who you weren't really sure about. So in Australia, and I know other countries, that the enduring power of attorney actually kicks in when you do lose capacity and lasts till death. So that's quite an interesting take in South Africa, that it's you actually lose that person who's been appointed when you lose capacity. So that raises a whole other estate planning issue. Can you appoint curators yourself?
Unfortunately not. You can nominate someone that you think would be capable, and so oftentimes it's a spouse. The law might appoint a spouse. It is more common, though, that a legal professional is appointed. There has been draft legislation out for, I think, the last 6 years, that would really deal with this incapacitated state where someone can't make their own financial decisions. It's just taking a very long time for that actually to come through.
Yeah, we've actually got the opposite, where someone who's appointed a person and then loses capacity, they can't change that. So, yeah, like you said, that they need to reverse. I suppose it's kind of the complete reverse where, they've said, look, I want my eldest son to do that. Eldest son may have, a partner who's a buyer bride or, in a vulnerable state or an addict, and all of a sudden they lose capacity and cannot change the document and that person's in charge. So we seem to have a same but different.
I think it comes down to, do you have someone that will notice that? Do you have a family member? Do you have a trusted professional that will notice you declining? Because I don't think this always happens, overnight. Now you can't make financial decisions. I mean, there's a very slow decline. And if you're not interacting regularly, you might just miss it.
And you can have those moments of lucidity where that person you see is absolutely fine, and yet other times, and look, that's me. I forget my PIN number half the time. My decline has begun. I'm not even 50. No, but I think advisors are, really in a privileged position when it comes to somebody's finances. We do hear things that, not even other people in their family know about. So we are in a precious place to be able to assist our clients.
Amanda, you jokingly said that you're almost 50. Interestingly, over the weekend, I read some research from America where they said the peak age for decision making is 53. After the age of 53, it starts declining, your ability to make these difficult decisions. So actually, that shocked me because I thought that was much younger than what I would have expected.
Yeah, well, I've got 5 good years left. That's what you're telling me. Then I'm all over Red Rover. Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? So that's cognitive ability, and
that's cognitive ability, and then the decline typically starts. And you could argue it, happens a lot younger for a lot of people. But I think we need to also
use it or lose it.
You have to use it or lose it, and at the same time, just almost normalize that this will happen. That's part of aging, and that it's okay. There's things that we can do to slow it down, but there's also things that we can do to help protect you and your money.
Yeah, absolutely. Dol, do you feel that the course and the extra knowledge that you've got now is valuable, and that it is something financial advisors need to be a lot more, frontline troops for?
I think if you are going to do work with people that you care for, I feel like you have to do as much as possible to help them. And so this is just another piece of the puzzle to help people in a place where they probably don't have anywhere else to go. And we're in a unique position to make a massive impact in someone's life, not only in their financial lives, but in their safety. And if you think about Maslow's basement, I think we have to start there. Do you feel safe? Do you have a roof over your head? Are you okay where you are right now? And this just gives you the tools to have a better quality conversation. And what I really loved is that the toolkit that we created during the course, because now I actually have something tangible that I can give to my clients, even though they might not be going through it, they might know someone, and that might help someone. So you don't always see the people that you make an impact on. And so to answer your question, I think it is a very valuable piece in that financial life planning puzzle.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned earlier that financial planners mostly just want to help people. And I know in Australia, since we had a Royal Commission a few years ago, that, the media negativity we're facing is we're all a bunch of crooks who want to rip you off and take commissions. I think the reality being that, I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, but I know it is in the UK, we're mostly small business people. We've gotten into it, like we've fallen, like I've said, we've come from being bank tellers, stockbrokers, musicians. And it's because firstly, I think our own self-knowledge, we wanted to improve that, but the ability to then help other people. And I've never met a financial advisor, I think, who willingly set out to do the wrong thing by other people. We read the ASIC reports over here, which is our regulator, about who they've banned and why. And it's really desperately sad and awful when you do read those reports about people who have been banned from the industry. But yeah, personally, I don't know if I just hang out with a lovely group of people, but the intention has always been that we're small business people, we're family, and we do just want to help. So like you said, I think this is just another, arrow in the quiver or feather in the cap of those who do just want to go down that path.
Unfortunately, the bad apples get the most publicity because, bad news sells. And so we see on the front of the newspapers, if you even have such a thing, you see online that that this person ran off with all their clients' money. But that's one out of millions.
Yeah.
So true. I think you are 100% correct. Ultimately, we just want to help people. Does that mean that there's no one that'll ever try and steal your money? No, probably not. Hence us having this conversation. So don't just trust blindly, but also know that most people just have a good intention behind that. I think that positive mindset will get you probably quite far.
So if you, like we're chatting with people who today could be potential clients all around the world, if they wanted to go and see a financial advisor wherever they are, what sort of advice would you give them? What sort of person should they be looking for? And what are some sort of top tips, I suppose, if they want to interview some people? What questions should they be asking?
Amanda, we see clients rushing into relationships. And most times it's because they've had a bad experience with another advisor. And so my advice would be treat this like you would dating. You don't get married after your first date. You start asking questions about, what's important to that person. How do they make decisions? What examples do they have of how they've supported other clients? Speak to the staff members of that financial advisor's practice, because they would probably tell you or give you a lot more information through a better filter than what a financial planner would. Unfortunately, financial planners often, we have to sell our services. It is still, for most people, a for-profit business. And so keep that in mind. Your relationship with your financial planner has to be mutually beneficial. It can't just be beneficial for the financial planner, and it can't just be beneficial for the client. It has to be for both. Your financial planner should be including everyone in your life that's important to you. So that might mean your spouse or your partner. If your financial planner is comfortable having conversations with only you, that might be a sign that they, probably not thinking as much about your life. Someone said last week, your financial planner should care as much about your money than anyone else that doesn't share your last name. So I thought that's quite a nice way of summarizing it. You should feel comfortable. That's someone that you're probably going to be sharing your hopes, your dreams, your fears. So take time to get comfortable, spend time with your advisor. It's a big relationship, but also make sure what you want out of that relationship. Is it purely transactional? Are you there to buy a financial product? Or is it, life-changing? Is this someone that's going to be holding your hand for the next 30, 40, maybe 50-year relationship when the time might come when you can't make financial decisions on your own? And so treat it with that gravitas. But sometimes it's just, hey, I need a financial product and I just need someone for the next week to help me through that.
Yep. It's interesting, the dating analogy. Because most often, look, there are those cases with the love at first sight, but, you do go through a few people that you meet and get to know, and, sometimes things don't work out. And what I love now is, okay, in dating, you'd probably socially stalk them on their Facebook or Insta. Yeah. Whereas these days, many financial advisors have, whether it's a YouTube channel or a website or a Facebook page or a LinkedIn profile, there is a fair bit of, I suppose, get to know, like, and trust you before I even pick up the phone call now. So, we can still do that social stalking of a potential financial advisor who will be a partner with us financially. So I got one guy who's like, I've got AAA wife. She's the one I married, and you're the financial wife. like, I really don't know what to do with that, but other people...
People skip that checking the licenses, checking the designations. They assume, just like when you go to a doctor, I'm assuming that those things are already in place. But don't assume. Maybe that is also a valuable piece.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when you have these, long-term relationships with people, and you do hear what, they do and don't have, and you're always trying to add value. Over here, our pension accounts are called superannuation, and we call it super for short. So I love it when they put me in their phone as Super Amanda. I feel it's my superpower.
It has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, it really does. I just need a cape. I'm all good. Louis, thank you so much for your time. I've really loved having you on the show. Is there any last information you'd like to give to people, I suppose, who are victims of financial abuse and really don't know where to turn or what to do? You said you've put a toolkit together. How can that help people?
Sorry, Amanda, I just missed that last question. You froze. Sorry. Could we edit that part?
Yep, all good.
I lost you when you said, is there any last...
Okay, I'll start that again. Is there any last advice, Louis, you'd like to give to people who are listening? They may be victims of financial abuse and not know where to turn. You've said you've put a toolkit together for people. I'd be happy to share that in the show notes if you're willing to share. Just last words of wisdom.
Amanda, I think I'd like to part saying that, there's people that care about you and there's people that want to help you. And it's okay to reach out to them. That might be someone like yourself, someone like a trusted advisor, a family member, will definitely share the toolkit. But having that community is what I see get people through this. It's that one friend, that church group, that, that special group of people that will get you through this. You will get through this. It might not be easy, but the people that love you and that care about you will help you through that. And that might be your financial planner. It might be someone in your community.
I love that idea of community. And most people I've interviewed who have come out the other side, it's so hard at the time when you're in it to think that there will ever be light at the end of the tunnel. But those who have, they had been isolated from friends and family and had to reconnect to form those relationships. But there was always someone who, was the first person they could call on to go, right, this is what's actually happening for me. So I think you're right with the community. Great way to end. Thank you so much again for your time, Louis. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Amanda, and for the work that you do. I think it is definitely life-changing.
Excellent. What does Michelle say? We don't just want to change a life. We might just want to save one. Great way to sign out. Thanks, Dal.
Thank you, super Amanda.